Hi guys, it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be doing another recent reads and I have a variety of books to talk about today. I have like a fantasy, a couple of romance, some mystery thriller, some general fiction. I have a short story collection, so a mix of books to go over. Unfortunately, I did not like a lot of these books that I'm going to talk about. A couple of these I actually wanted to DNF, and after thinking about it a little bit, I probably should have DNF'd those books. But I wanted to actually push through them because I was thinking that maybe if I just try and get through them, I might like them by the end of it, and that was not the case. So we will get to those eventually. But one of the books I really did enjoy, and I had a feeling that I was going to like this book, but I didn't realize that I was going to like it as much as I did. So I'm really excited to talk about that one. But we will do this how we normally do it, and that is starting with my lowest rated and working my way all the way up to my highest rated. So we will go ahead and get started. So the first book that I want to talk about is Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney, which is an adult mystery thriller novel. And this one follows our two main characters, which are these two parents by the name of Pete and Maddie. And this starts off one day with Pete getting his son ready to go to nursery, and he gets this knock on the door from this man by the name of Miles, and Miles informs Pete that Pete's son, Theo, is actually not his son. It is Miles' son, and that Theo was switched at birth. So Theo actually belongs to Miles, and Miles' son, David, actually belongs to Pete. So the story actually follows both of these families as they are trying to figure out what they want to do with their children, whether they want to keep them as they are in their current situations, or if they want to switch the sons and take back their biological children. They are also trying to figure out whether or not they want to pursue some sort of legal action with the hospital and figure out what exactly happened and why their children were switched at birth. While they're in the middle of that investigation, they kind of find out that something else might have taken place at the hospital, and the reason why those children were switched at birth might have something to do with one of the parents from one of these two families. So throughout this story, we are trying to figure out, one, what these parents want to do with their children, and two, which of these parents was involved with the switching of the children at the hospital. So this story is also told in like a mixed media format. So we are getting like police investigation notes. It's being told in like text messages, emails. There's this like dad forum that Pete was involved in. So anytime he was like needing advice about his son Theo, he would go on this like online chat room. So we was getting those messages. We were getting reports from anyone that was involved in this investigation. So for instance, anytime like the nurses were questioned, we were getting those transcripts. So we got all that information in like I said, like the mixed media format. So all of that was included in this as well. I overall gave this book a 2 stars. I initially was here for this because the premise of it sounded really interesting, because this is something that you don't hear often. Not a lot of people are getting knocks on their door saying that their children were switched at birth. And by the time both of these parents got this information, their children were 2 years old. Yes, that sounds young, but again, that's 2 years that both of these parents has spent with these children, and that's a lot of time that's already invested. So that's devastating news for a parent to get. And I was here for that. I was really interested. Where this started to lose me at is when we started to, I guess, get into like the thrillery part of this, and when we started to move into the story, the part of the story where we're trying to figure out which of the parents was actually involved in like the hospital drama and that whole like side plot. I didn't care for that. I don't think this was the type of book that needed that. To me, and I know a lot of people don't really like this in like their mysteries, is that this would have been like a really good courtroom drama. Just these families really trying to sit here and figure out why their children were switched at birth. I think a lot of factors would have already played into that whole situation at the hospital anyways, without like a parent being involved in that. And I think that would have been interesting to see that play out in like a courtroom setting. And I think that would have been what this should have been. And maybe that's what I wanted. The unnecessary drama stuff, I wasn't here for that. And then I didn't like our main parents in this, Pete and Maddie. They were saying some really just unnecessary things that I just did not agree with. So both of these children were born prematurely. So they both had some sort of medical issues. One child had more medical issues than the other. And the child that Pete and Maddie had, Theo, fortunately didn't have as many medical issues as their biological son that they did not raise had. And Miles and his wife that was raising their biological child, they were more financially stable. Well, they kept making comments, Pete and Maddie kept making comments about how, well, it's probably better that they ended up with our biological child because we don't have the money to take care of him anyways. And I'm just like what? Like, why would you say that? It was like little comments like that kept being made throughout the story that I just didn't think was needed, and it just didn't sit well with me. And then there were some issues with like infidelity that was done. Not that I have problems with like reading about infidelity, but it was just kind of like annoying how one person can, you know, cheat on their partner, but then when the other person cheats on them, it's an issue with the other person. That was annoying to read that too. And it was like a huge part of this book, and I just didn't want to, that's just not what I was here for. So I just ended up giving this one 2 stars, especially with the way that this ended. No, I just really wish that this was just the 2 kids switched at birth, courtroom drama, us just trying to figure out what exactly happened at the hospital and where the mess up happened. That's all that I wanted. We got a lot of extra unnecessary drama in this for no reason. So 2 stars. So then the next one that I have here is Nobody's Magic by Destiney Birdsong. And this one is the short story collection. And I must be having bad luck this year with picking up books that are short story collections, and I have no idea that they're short story collections because this says a novel on the front. It don't say short story, but anyways. So this is an adult short story collection, and it's supposed to be 3 short stories, each one following a different albino woman in Shreveport, Louisiana. And the first short story is called Drive. And this is supposed to be about a young woman in her like 20s. And this is more of like a coming of age short story about this Black albino woman. And she is trying to essentially break free of her parents, and her parents, especially her father, is really overprotective. And we are seeing her like fall in love for the first time, navigating a friendship that she's had for a long time, feelings that she's trying to deal with that she's never felt for the first time, and her just trying to deal with being albino, her overprotective parents, falling in love, and growing up in Louisiana. The second short story is called Bottled Water, and this one is about this again, a Black albino woman in Louisiana whose mother has just been brutally murdered in a drive-by shooting, and she is trying to figure out who actually murdered her mother. She is trying to help the police in this investigation, and she ends up connecting with this boy who is also dealing with some trauma from his past. They end up connecting because they're both dealing with some sort of grief. And so we are following technically both of them as they are dealing with their trauma. And then the last one, which is called Mind Prompt, again, following a Black albino woman. And she, although she's from Louisiana, her story is taking place, I already forgot the state, but it's all the way on the West Coast. And she is at this conference. She ends up falling for this man there. And to be honest, I don't really understand what that story is about. That's part of the reason why I didn't like that short story. So overall, I ended up giving this one a 2 stars. My biggest problem with this is that I had 2 big problems. My first big problem with this short story collection is that these short stories didn't feel complete. They literally felt like they ended in the middle of the story. Now, I've read short stories that, yeah, they're short, but they felt like a complete story. These did not feel like that. They literally felt like they ended in the middle of the story. 2, these were supposed to, I thought, focus way more on the women being albino. I felt like in the first story, it really did focus on our younger main character being albino, and that was the main focus of that story because her parents were really overprotective of her. And part of the reason why they were so overprotective of her is because when she was younger and in I think like elementary school, she was bullied a lot because she was albino, and that was like the basis of their worry over her. The other 2 stories, I just kind of felt like, yeah, they brought up that the women were albino, but it didn't really have anything to do with like the stories. And I kind of wanted that to be like the main focus of those stories. Like here we have this nice cover. Obviously it's an albino woman. I thought that the other stories would make that a focus. That's what I was here for. That's what I wanted. And the other 2 stories, I felt like they mentioned it, but it just wasn't the focus like I wanted it to be. Also, the other 2 stories, the one where the second story where both of the characters were kind of like bonding over their grief, by the end of that short story, I kind of felt like we were more focused on the guy and his grief and not the woman who's supposed to be the main character of the story. I kind of felt like by the end of that, she took a back seat and we were just focusing on him. His whole situation, you find out what his situation is in that short story. We're like focused on him, what he went through. And by the end of it, I had forgot what even happened to her because we were just talking about him. So I didn't like that. This last story, I was so confused throughout the whole story. I don't even understand what the conference she was at was for. It took me probably the whole story before I even understood what the heck that was for. Her whole romance, because each of these women end up falling in love. And her whole romance with the guy did not make sense. When you use the term like insta love, this was insta love if I've ever seen it. I've never seen people move so fast. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous. I've just never. It didn't even make sense. I was like, this can't be real. Even the main character was like, this can't be real. I didn't like it. It didn't even seem like it fit in here. And again, it ended so abruptly. I didn't like this. This is one of the ones where I said I wanted to DNF it, and I almost did. And I really felt like I should have, because I just did not get anything out of this one. So unfortunately, I really did not like this, but I did finish it and I gave it a 2 stars. So the next one that I have is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is one of his new releases. It's an adult mystery thriller. And this one follows our main character, Casey. And she is this actress turned alcoholic. And she is grieving the death of her husband. So she has taken a break from acting and she is staying at her family's lake house. While she is on the lake, she has noticed that someone has moved into the house across the lake. And she is introduced to the woman that has moved across the lake, because that woman by the name of Catherine is drowning, and Casey went out and saved her. And so they ended up bonding. I think like a day or two later, Catherine ends up missing, and Casey believes that Catherine's husband, Tom, has something to do with Catherine's disappearance. And so Casey is trying to figure out what happened to Catherine. That is basically what this is about. I ended up giving this one a 2 stars. In the beginning, I did actually like this one. Casey is what you would consider an unreliable narrator, because you can't really trust anything that she says, because all she does is drink. So, I mean, can you trust anything that's coming out of her mouth? But I enjoyed the beginning of this. Where this fell apart for me, though, is at the end when we started getting the twist. One of the twists I did not see coming with Casey, but the other twist that we got in here, I don't know what Sager was trying to do. I think he was trying to do something different, but it didn't work. And I don't even necessarily know if it didn't work or if it just wasn't explained well for me. I'm not sure what it was, but I didn't like it. I thought by the time we got there, it was just so laughable to me that I had to laugh by the end of this, because it was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It didn't make sense. And then the way that it was explained, what the characters was doing, it didn't go with what they said was supposed to be happening. That probably doesn't make any sense, but I can't tell you any more than that because I don't want to spoil it. But I didn't care for this one. And this is my 4th book by Sager. So I still have 2 more to go. I have Lock Every Door and Home Before Dark, I think it's the other one. So it seems like, based off of other people's reviews, that I've saved the 2 best ones for last. But yeah, I didn't care. I didn't care for this one. Some people still really enjoy this one, and I think you would like this if you don't mind the twist. But if you don't like the twist, I think that will probably ruin the whole book for you, like it did for me. Because before I got to the twist, I was actually enjoying it. I really was. It was really interesting to me. I liked Casey as a character. The other questionable people in this, like, I was feeling it until I got to the end of it, and it just like ruined it for me. So yeah, this one just got a 2 stars for me. And this one was actually, out of the other ones that I've read from Sager, this is probably I know a lot of people did not like Survive the Night, but this one to me is worse than Survive the Night. So yeah, 2 stars for me on this one. So next up we have is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. And this one is, I just consider this an adult fiction humor novel, I guess. And so this one follows a bank robber who decides to go rob a bank, and it didn't go well. And so they run across the street into this apartment building to hide from the cops, and they end up walking into this apartment that is in the middle of an apartment viewing. The bank robber ends up taking the people hostage. And so I think it's like 7 or 8 people that the bank robber has taken hostage, along with the real estate agent. And so in this, we are following the bank robber, the hostages, and the 2 officers that are trying to figure out what happened to the bank robber. So the 2 police officers in this, they are interviewing the hostages, trying to figure out what exactly took place while they were in the apartment with the bank robber. And then it's being like told in like an alternating format. So it's getting told in like the present, with the police officers interviewing the hostages, trying to figure out where the bank robber went. And then it's being told in like the past, where we are actually seeing what took place in real time with the bank robber and the hostages. Hope that makes sense. So I gave this one a 3 stars. This is the other one that I almost DNF'd because it took me about 100 pages before I was able to get into this one because I was not feeling it at first. This is my second book by Fredrik Backman. The first book that I read by him was Beartown, which was kind of like the same thing because Beartown I actually ended up really enjoying, but it did take me a little bit to get into that one. This one, I feel like it took me even longer to get into this one. So this one deals with a lot of heavy topics. One of the ones, content warning, is suicide. And we get a lot of background information into a lot of these characters. We get a lot of background information in for like the 2 cops that are involved in this whole plot. We get a lot of information with the bank robber and why they decided to rob a bank. We get some background info into the hostages and why exactly they are at that apartment and what brought them there. And then we get some information into how like everybody's connected in some kind of way. And so that part I actually really liked. Where this threw me off was like kind of like the humor, I guess, in it. Some parts I did think was funny, but these people were super annoying. And I know that that was the point of this, and that's where some of the humor was supposed to come from. But these characters were sometimes, it was too over the top for me with how annoying they were. And I did also listen to this on audiobook, so that might be why they were even more annoying to me. But a lot of it, I was just like, I can't. This is too much. And it just, I'm not sure how I felt either about it flipping back and forth between this wanting to be like super serious and then being funny. I almost would have rather this either be funny or it be serious. And I almost feel like I would have rather it be serious because those were the parts I tended to like more than it being funny. Even though, yeah, some of these things I did find a little bit funny, but a lot of it I just found like it was too over the top. I did like the parts where you figured out how, you know, certain people were connected to each other and all of that, but I didn't really care for like a lot of the humor, and it just took too long for me to get into it. And I just thought this was okay. Like I said, I rated this one a 3 stars, but I didn't really understand the hype for this one because I know a lot of people like this one. I just thought it was fine. So then the next book I have here is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is an adult fiction, and this is my first Colleen Hoover novel. If you've ever been in any bookstore, you probably have seen a shelf with Colleen Hoover books, and I have always wanted to read something by Colleen Hoover just because she is so popular, and I feel like I'm the only one that's never read anything by her. So finally, I just went into a bookstore one day and I was like, ooh, that one. And so I chose this one. So in this, we follow our main character, Lily. And at the beginning of this, she is just now starting a brand new relationship with this neurosurgeon by the name of Ryle. And we learn from these letters that she used to write to Ellen DeGeneres. Instead of writing in a journal when she was a teenager, she used to write to Ellen DeGeneres as if that was her journal, just like recounting her days. We learned that she had a very traumatic childhood. And so while she's in this relationship with Ryle, she kind of every so often reads these letters, and we are getting her past and what happened through her like high school years. I'm pretty sure, yeah, her high school years. And every so often throughout this book, she's going back and reading those letters. And so we're getting her past, and we learn that she had somewhat of a traumatic childhood. So we are following her while she's in this relationship with Ryle. And during that relationship, her former first love, Atlas, comes back into her life. and now she is starting to question whether or not she should actually be with Ryle. And that is essentially what this book is about without spoiling too much. I ended up rating this one a 3 stars. I thought this was fine. One of the things that I did like was how we were getting the flashback scenes through the letters. I did enjoy that. I've seen a couple of people say that that was pretty cheesy, like getting those letters to Ellen DeGeneres, but I thought it was cute. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a different way to get, you know, her background. So I liked that part. I liked the other characters in here because Lily is going through a lot of stuff in this story, and I just really liked how the other characters responded to her and the things that she was going through, because their response could have gone one or two ways. And to be honest, I thought it was going to go another way, and I'm so happy that it didn't, and that I'm happy that it didn't. That's all that I can say. So I really liked those characters because of that. Besides that, this just didn't, I don't know, I guess this just didn't connect with me as much maybe as it did with other people, because I've never been through anything like this. And I just felt like it was so much going on in here that at some points I just felt like the author was just adding more stuff just for the sake of adding more stuff. And one of those being Atlas, the character of Atlas, because I felt like this could have just been a story about Lily and Ryle and her getting over the things that she went through in her past, and the story would have been just fine. And you would have never known that Atlas had to be a part of it, because with the addition of him, the author then had to add in even more trauma. And I just don't think that this needed that, if that makes any sense. If you read it, you probably know what I'm trying to say. I think Lily's story and her relationship with Ryle would have been just enough, especially with the way that it ended. Because it was kind of like, yeah, I don't think we needed it. But I gave it 3 stars. I'm not in a rush to pick up anything else from Colleen Hoover. I do think, though, that this is getting like a part 2 or something. Like a story about Atlas is coming out, I think. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I read that somewhere. So, but yeah, I gave this one a 3 stars. I thought it was fine. So then the next one that I picked up is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. This is an adult romance novel. And so this one follows our main character by the name of Evie, who was a high school senior. And she used to be like really into romance novels. We find out that her parents are, I think, recently divorced or in the middle of divorce. No, they're recently divorced, and that has devastated Evie, and she is no longer like into romance like she used to. She doesn't believe in love anymore after seeing her parents get divorced, and she decides that she wants to get rid of all her romance novels. She goes to like the little free library and gives her books away. She sees this woman there, and this woman gives her this book called Instructions for Dancing. And when she receives this book, she automatically gets this power where she can see couples, where she can see like the lifeline of couples, like from the time they get together all the way until the time that they break up, just from a single kiss. So anytime she sees a couple kiss, she can see from the time they got together all the way to the time that they are going to break up. And so this like immediately shocks her world. This is not something that she wants. She doesn't want to be involved with that. And so she tries to get help from one of her friends. Her friend tells her, well, look inside the book. She looks inside the book. It has the address of like this dance studio, and she goes there to try to see maybe if she goes to this dance studio, she can figure out how to get rid of this power. But she ends up going there and gets wrapped into signing up for this like dance competition. She meets this guy by the name of X. They become dance partners. She ends up making a connection with X. And then we are following her. She's getting ready for this dance competition as she's trying to figure out what she is going to do with this new power that she has and whether or not she is able to get rid of it. I thought that this book was super sweet. I did not think that I was going to like this as much as I did. I ended up rating this one a 4 stars. It's super fast to get through. I listened to this one on audio. By the end of it, it got super serious. It started off all nice, cute, fluffy. Oh, Evie has this little power where, you know, she can see into the lifeline of couples, but then it got real serious by the end of it. And I was not expecting this. But this one, it kind of makes you look differently at love in general and relationships in general. And it kind of had me thinking about some things. I really like Nicola Yoon's work. This is my second one. The first book that I read by her was Everything, Everything, which I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the movie. I feel like I've heard people say like mixed things about that, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this one. It was just a fun time. It was a nice little like palate cleanser, I would say, after some of the stuff that I've read before I got to this one. This was like exactly what I needed. So I really enjoyed this one. 4 stars. And then the last one that I have is The Sword of Kigen by M.L. Wang. And I'm just going to tell you right off, I gave this one a 5 stars. This was actually one of the ones that I had in my 5-star prediction videos for fantasy books. And this was spot on. I had a feeling that I was going to really like this one, and I did. So this is an Asian-inspired adult fantasy novel, and we are following this really powerful family. And we're primarily in the beginning following this young boy. I believe his name is Mamoru. In the beginning, we learn that he has been taught one thing about the Kaigenese empire. And the new kid on the block comes in and tells him basically that everything that he's been taught about Kaigen is wrong. And what they've been telling you and teaching you is wrong. And this is really what's going on. Mamoru's whole world has been flipped upside down and he doesn't know what to do. He's distraught. And now he has to go to his mom and be like, Mom, is this true? So then we learn that his mother, I believe her name is Misaki. And we learn from a few flashbacks throughout this story that she is like this trained fighter. And she is phenomenal. And she basically knows a lot more than what she is able to say, because in Kaigen, women are basically just supposed to keep their heads down, have babies, and do what they're told from their husbands. And in this family, the men are supposed to be the ones out here fighting. And so she kind of tells Mamoru, like, yeah, but don't tell your father, you know, that I told you this. And so basically, as we're learning that everything is not what it seems to be in Kaigen, a war is brewing. And so these people in Kaigen are basically having to fight to survive. And so that's what the story is in a nutshell. I freaking love this. The fact that this was a standalone in itself is freaking amazing. I loved the characters. I loved the magic in this. I loved how just the story of like Misaki and how she's powerful, and how in the beginning she started one way and having to kind of dim her light and not overpower her husband and kind of like let him shine. And by the end, she had to do what she had to do to survive and protect her children and her family. I freaking love this. In the magic in here, these people can like control like fire. They can basically control the elements. So like fire and water. Make sure I'm telling you that right. Yeah, fire and water and air. And then you have people that can do light, sound, and strength. And then, of course, you have people that don't have any power. And so in the beginning, I did have a fear about the pacing because I was buddy reading this with one of my friends and we were like 100 pages in and we were still on day 1. And my friend was like, you know, have you noticed that this is a really long day? And I was like, wait, are we still on day 1? And he was like, yeah. I said, oh. But after that, like, this was freaking fantastic. And everything that happened and how this was like wrapped up and concluded. And this was great. And one of my like complaints that I have with like some fantasy stories is I just feel like the stakes aren't high enough, and I feel like some of these authors just don't kill off their characters, or oh my god, like even if they kill them off, I just know in like 2 pages they're just gonna bring them back. Like they always bring them back somehow. These people die and then 2 pages later they're walking back in the next scene. I was complaining to my friend about that, and then the stakes was high. I spoke too soon. I told him that. And I was like, no, M.O. Wang, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Bring him back. Bring him back, please. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You can't do this to me. Oh, I loved this. I loved this. And like I said, I'm going to keep saying, I can't believe this was a standalone because everything that we got in here, I just can't believe she was able to make a complete story like this in 1 book. So if you have not picked up the Sword of Kigen, you need to, because I cannot believe I just had this sitting on my shelf for as long as I did. This was amazing. 5 stars. 5 stars if you couldn't tell. Ended off all that on a high note because I got a 5-star read out of all that. Love this. Well, that is all that I have for you guys. So I will see you guys next time.